Life can be unpredictable, and no matter who we are or where we come from, we all face seasons of hardship. Whether it's financial stress, health challenges, broken relationships, or overwhelming anxiety, difficult times are an inevitable part of the human experience. In moments of trouble, when everything feels uncertain and we are weighed down by fear, worry, or doubt, the question often arises: where is God in all of this? Can we really trust Him when things seem to be falling apart? The Bible is filled with stories of people who faced great trials, yet found hope and strength by trusting in God. From Moses leading the Israelites through the Red Sea to David standing against Goliath, the Scriptures reveal that trust in God is not just an abstract idea. It is a source of real power and peace in the midst of life's storms. Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6 reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." This invitation to trust God goes beyond intellectual belief. It calls us to surrender our fears and place our confidence in God's love and wisdom. But trust doesn't come naturally, especially when we are overwhelmed by difficulties. When the world around us is shaking, trusting God can feel risky, even irrational. How do we trust when we can't see a way out? How do we hold on to faith when we don't know what the future holds? These are real and honest questions that many people struggle with, especially in times of crisis. In this message, we will explore what it truly means to trust God in times of trouble. We will look at the biblical foundation for trusting God, learn from the examples of those who have gone before us, and consider how trust can bring peace and hope in our darkest moments. Whether you are facing a personal trial right now or simply seeking to strengthen your faith for future challenges, this topic is an invitation to discover the peace that comes from trusting in God's goodness, even when life feels uncertain. Trusting God doesn't eliminate the storms, but it allows us to face them with a firm foundation, knowing that He is with us, guiding us through every trial. Trusting God in times of trouble. Trusting God during difficult times is often one of the most challenging aspects of our faith journey. When we are faced with uncertainty, pain, or fear, our natural inclination might be to take control or to seek answers and solutions based on our own understanding. However, true trust in God involves surrendering our worries and placing our confidence in His wisdom, even when we don't fully understand what He is doing. This trust is not a passive acceptance of hardship, but an active decision to rely on God's character, His promises, and His presence, no matter the circumstances. God is faithful, even when life is uncertain. Throughout the Bible, we see time and time again that God remains faithful, even in situations that seem hopeless. One of the most powerful examples of trusting God in times of trouble is the story of Job. Job was a man who experienced unimaginable suffering. He lost his wealth, his children, and his health in a series of tragic events. Yet, in the midst of his despair, Job continued to trust in God, even when he could not understand the reasons for his suffering. In Job 13, verse 15, Job declares, "Though He slay me, yet will I hope in Him." This statement reflects a deep, unwavering trust that goes beyond circumstances. Job's trust was rooted in his belief that God is good, even when life is not. Similarly, we can find comfort in knowing that God is present in our pain and struggles. Isaiah 43 verse 2 reminds us, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze." This passage does not promise that we will avoid trouble, but it assures us that God will be with us in the midst of it. His presence is our greatest comfort. We are never alone, no matter how overwhelming our situation may seem. God's promises are unshakable. In difficult times, it is essential to remember the promises of God. His word is a solid foundation that we can stand on when everything else feels uncertain. One of the most comforting promises is found in Romans 8, verse 28, which says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." This doesn't mean that everything that happens to us is good, but that God has the power to bring good out of even the darkest situations. He is always working behind the scenes, using our trials to shape us, grow us, and bring about his greater purposes. Another powerful promise is found in Philippians 4 verses 6 to 7, where Paul writes, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." This verse reminds us that when we bring our worries to God in prayer, he promises to give us his peace. This peace doesn't depend on our circumstances. It is a supernatural peace that surpasses our understanding and guards our hearts in times of trouble. Trusting God means exchanging our anxiety for his peace. Learning to trust through trials. Trials are not only moments of difficulty, they are also opportunities for spiritual growth. The Bible often speaks of trials as refining moments that can strengthen our faith and deepen our relationship with God. In James 1 verses 2 to 4, we are encouraged to consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. This passage reveals that our trials are not without purpose. Through them, God is developing perseverance, character, and maturity in us. This doesn't mean we are expected to enjoy suffering, but rather to trust that God is at work in and through our difficulties. Trials can deepen our trust by teaching us to rely on God's strength rather than our own. As we walk through difficult seasons, we learn that God's grace is sufficient for us, 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9, and that his power is made perfect in our weakness. When we reach the end of our own resources, we discover that God is more than enough to sustain us. The story of Daniel in the lion's den, Daniel 6, is a powerful example of trust in the midst of danger. Daniel, a man of unwavering faith, was thrown into a den of lions for his commitment to God. Despite the life-threatening situation, Daniel continued to trust in God's protection. God responded to Daniel's faith by closing the mouths of the lions, sparing his life. This story serves as a reminder that God is our protector in times of danger, and when we place our trust in him, he can deliver us from even the most perilous situations. Trusting God when we don't understand. One of the greatest challenges in trusting God is accepting that we may not always understand his ways. In Isaiah 55 verses 8 to 9, God declares, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." This means that God's plans and purposes are often beyond our comprehension. There will be times when we don't understand why certain things happen, but we can trust that God sees the bigger picture and is working all things according to his perfect plan. Trusting God doesn't require us to have all the answers. It requires us to have faith in the one who does. Proverbs 3 verses 5 to 6 calls us to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. This means surrendering our desire for control and placing our confidence in God's wisdom, knowing that he will guide us through the uncertainties of life. Trust leads to peace and strength. The result of trusting God is a deep, abiding peace that transcends our circumstances. When we place our trust in God, we experience the peace that only he can give, a peace that is not dependent on the absence of trouble, but is rooted in the presence of God. Isaiah 26 verse 3 says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." This perfect peace comes from fixing our minds on God and trusting in his goodness, even in the face of trials. Moreover, trust in God leads to strength and endurance. Isaiah 40 verse 31 promises, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." When we place our hope and trust in God, he renews our strength and empowers us to face the challenges ahead. We may not always feel strong in the moment, but as we continue to trust in God, he sustains us and gives us the strength to persevere. Trusting God in times of trouble is one of the most transformative decisions we can make in our spiritual lives. While challenges and difficulties are inevitable, the way we respond to them shapes not only our personal growth, but also our relationship with God. Choosing to trust God does not mean that we will always understand why things happen the way they do, nor does it mean that we will avoid pain or hardship. What it does mean is that we are placing our lives, our fears, anxieties, and uncertainties into the hands of a God who is infinitely loving, wise, and faithful. The scriptures teach us that God is always present, even in our darkest moments. His promises serve as a firm foundation when everything else feels unstable. Whether we are facing overwhelming personal struggles or simply feeling lost in the uncertainties of life, the call to trust in God is an invitation to find peace and strength in his presence. Psalm 46 verse 10 encourages us to be still and know that I am God. This stillness is not inactivity, but a quiet confidence that comes from knowing that God is in control. As we've explored, biblical figures like Job, Daniel, and the Apostle Paul trusted in God despite facing immense trials, and their lives stand as testimonies of God's faithfulness. These examples remind us that trusting God is not a passive act. It is an active decision to let go of our need for control and to rely on God's wisdom and timing. While the outcome may not always be what we expect or desire, we can rest assured that God's plans are for our good, even when we can't immediately see the bigger picture. In moments of trouble, trusting God allows us to experience a supernatural peace, a peace that surpasses our understanding and sustains us through life's storms. This peace doesn't come from the absence of difficulties, but from the presence of God, who walks with us through every trial. As we trust him, he renews our strength, giving us the ability to endure, to grow, and to thrive, even in the most challenging circumstances. In conclusion, trusting God in times of trouble is a powerful act of faith that opens the door to his peace, his guidance, and his sustaining strength. It is a choice to lean on his promises and to believe that he is with us, working all things for our good. As we navigate the ups and downs of life, may we learn to trust more deeply in the God who never fails, who always provides, and who holds our future in his hands. This trust will not only bring us through the trials of today, but it will also prepare us to walk confidently with God, no matter what tomorrow may bring.